streaming live. This is Tracking the Tropics.
Tropical Storm Dorian, our fourth named storm of the 2019 hurricane season, as it gains strength in the Eastern Caribbean. But could it be a concern for us? We've got the latest models right here on Tracking the Tropics. Hey there, everybody. WFLA digital anchor JB Buno here with you live on stream. Again, streaming to 6 states across the southeastern United States. We're going to go right to left here, starting with our featured meteorologist today. That's Ian Oliver, who just wrapped up his midday broadcast here on WFLA News Channel 8 for Storm Team 8. But we're going to start on the left side of your screen with Storm Team 8 meteorologist Amanda Holly standing by with the latest on Tropical Storm Dorian. Hey there, Amanda, and this is what we're talking about today.
Yeah, you know, we went from nothing in the tropics for quite a long time to the tropics being very active. We've been tracking at least something for the past week or so. Now we're tracking Tropical Storm Dorian, and we're tracking a tropical wave that's sitting out in the Atlantic that has a high chance of developing as well. But let's start out with Tropical Storm Dorian. All eyes have been on Dorian for the past couple of days now. Sustained winds at 60 miles per hour as of the 11 a.m. update. We will likely get another update here in the next 15 minutes or so. That would only be a position and possibly a speed update, a wind speed, not a cone update here. But you can see it's still not the best looking tropical storm. We do have quite a bit of convection there, and we're starting to see some outflow on the outer edges, which is a good sign of strengthening. We're not expecting fast strengthening here, but we are expecting some strengthening over the next couple of days. Here's that official track. It will likely be impacting the Windward Islands as early as tonight. Those tropical storm force winds starting, possibly hurricane force gusts there as well, moving over the islands at early Tuesday morning. It's going to continue to move through the Caribbean, strengthening as it does so. It is expected to become a Category 1 hurricane here with winds of 80 miles per hour early Wednesday morning. But as it continues that northwestward track, it is going to move over Hispaniola, and that, as we know it, is called the hurricane graveyard. Very mountainous islands here, and hurricanes do not like islands or mountainous islands because it does tear them apart. So we are expecting some weakening here, but the newest update as of 11 a.m. has Dorian staying a tropical storm with winds of 50 miles per hour as it moves into the Bahamas. Earlier, we were thinking that it was going to weaken. I do want to note here, though, that the National Hurricane Center is expressing some pretty low confidence as we get towards days 4 and 5 out here with the intensity. Now, the forecast track, we have pretty high confidence is generally going to be moving in this area, but the intensity, so the strength, the wind speeds here, pretty low confidence. So it's too early to say what impacts we'll see in the Bahamas or even possibly the state of Florida. So we're going to keep an eye on that, but just know this is generally the direction that Dorian will take. But after it moves over Hispaniola and the Dominican Republic there, Puerto Rico, we are going to really be watching that strength because it could weaken or it could stay a tropical storm. Really going to depend on where that center takes. So there's some takeaways I want to note here. The storm does have some things going for it, and it has some things against it. It is over some very warm sea surface temperatures. Obviously, that's energy for Dorian, and it has weak wind shear around the storm right now. So those are things that will continue to allow it to strengthen, but there are some inhibiting factors. It is surrounded by dust right now, and that dust keeps getting into the center of the storm, not allowing it to form an eye, which is good news for us because we don't want it to strengthen. It's also going to be interacting with those mountains, so we're going to have to watch for that. So there's lower than normal confidence with that long-term intensity, like I said, and the potential impacts to the Bahamas and possibly Florida, or at least the southeast coast there. Just uncertain right now, too early to say. And before I head over and send it back to Ian and JB, just want to note Invest 98L still has a high chance of developing. You can see this convection bubbling up here, but National Hurricane Center still giving it a high chance of developing. So latest update right now, it is 90% 2-day and 90% 5-day. That just came out. We just got that from Ed Bloodsworth. Thank you, Ed. But still, again, a high chance of developing as it moves away from the state of Florida and most likely off the coast of the United States. So this one, not really a concern here, but we will keep an eye on it. Most eyes, though, on Tropical Storm Dorian. I'll send it back over to you, Ian and JB.
Alrighty, and I want to bring you right in here and talking about, again, Tropical Storm Dorian, as we're going to change our weather graphics here in just a second to get back up with with Tropical Storm Dorian. What are we looking at here as far as both the short-term and the long-term impact of this storm?
A little bit about the evolution of Dorian. It became, as you mentioned, our 4th named storm of the season. That happened on Saturday morning. Started out as this tiny, compact tropical system, and when I say tiny, I mean it. Tropical storm force winds only extended out about 25 miles from that center of circulation. Now, that has expanded some. Now extends out about 45 miles, but at the time it became a tropical system, was several hundred miles off to the east of the Lesser Antilles, more specifically the Windward Islands, and now it's only about 100 miles, a little bit better than 100 miles off to the east-southeast of Barbados. So we're going to start to see those impacts happening as early as this afternoon and evening, and then for the Windward Islands eventually tonight. Then it emerges into the northeastern Caribbean, and this is going to be a critical time period over the next couple days. We were talking a little bit about forecast confidence. That's twofold. We have confidence related to where the system is heading and how strong it's going to be. So we're in a situation here where there's very high confidence as far as where the system is heading, but it's a little bit ironic in the sense that even the tiniest of deviations with the track of this system long-term are going to have huge impacts on its long-term intensity for many of the reasons that Amanda was already talking about. So it's still much too early when we talk about beyond Puerto Rico, Hispaniola, to talk about what impacts we might see even locally. But there are a number of factors here moving forward. A little bit of extra wind shear in the northeastern Caribbean and that exact track. Worst case scenario as far as long-term intensity, and you could see that a bit from the track, would be if it shoots that gap right in between Puerto Rico and Hispaniola. There wouldn't be that interaction with the mountainous terrain of Hispaniola, which is very mountainous. But I'd like to point out, a lot of people don't realize there's a mountain range there.
It's large.
5 to 10,000
Yeah.
feet. Those are big mountains, especially with a small circulation like this. Terrain like that can just tear it apart. So that is a possibility still. We've seen that with numerous tropical systems passing over Hispaniola. That track is going to be very critical. How well does the inner core of this system defend itself against some of that dry air that's surrounding it? Tight inner core, if we were to get an eye to form with that, with such a small compact circulation, that would in a sense protect it a little bit from that dry air that immediately surrounds it. It's over really warm water, as you pointed out. So there's definitely some competing influences at this point, and that's why forecast models long-term are all over the place.
Low confidence.
And I want to note that the forecast cone looks like it's going right over this string of islands here. I mean, from the Eastern Caribbean all the way heading our way. So again, now as we transition to perhaps the longer-term impacts here, we don't know. Do we know if this is reaching hurricane status? I mean, where's the confidence level as far as the future forecasting for Dorian?
So forecast confidence is high with the track of this storm. We're going to continue to see it move northwest, but the intensity forecast is pretty low confidence, as Ian was just saying. And you can see here with the track, if it moves, just a little further to the east or a little further to the west, it's going to have big impacts, especially because it's a small storm, like Ian was saying, because if that small center moves over the mountainous islands, it's going to be torn apart. But because it's small, just a little further jog to the east, it could stay very well intact and then continue to move over the warm waters of the Bahamas and maybe stay a little stronger. And I think that that's where the National Hurricane Center was going this time with this update.
Yeah, honestly, Amanda, over the weekend, it's been fascinating to track the early evolution of the storm, because looking at the global models, which are, because they're global, a little bit lesser resolution, I'm looking at those as they evolved over the weekend. It was like, where is this storm? They weren't even picking up on it, or they were diminishing it because of wind shear in the northeastern Caribbean. Some of the higher resolution forecast models, the hurricane models, did have the system, and there was kind of some variability in as far
those as well,
how much they were impressed. Something else to point out, again, in this very early nature of this storm, the first trip by the hurricane hunters into this system was yesterday evening, and that is, of course, so important. They're not only sampling the storm itself, but the air above and immediately surrounding the storm, its environment, essentially, where it's trying to develop, where it's trying to go. That information is just barely finding its way into our forecast models. So from here on out, we get regular missions by the hurricane hunters providing us with critical data that will improve the forecast models, not only for the global models, but also for the hurricane models.
So we have a large digital audience right now, and a lot of them are right here in the state of Florida, whether it's Tampa Bay or Miami or Orlando or as far northeast as Jacksonville. For those, let's say that the forecast models have this going accurately, and you were talking about those mountainous regions perhaps, you know, tearing up this storm a bit. Does that just mean long term that we're just looking at potentially just a lot of rain, a lot of precipitation heading our way, or what could we be looking at in the week to come?
Honestly, that depends on the exact track too, you know, how far it sits off the Florida coast, if it moves overland or if it stays off the coast. And we kind of saw this last weekend, Ian, with that wave sitting off the coast. It kind of stayed further away and kind of kept a lot of moisture away from the west coast of Florida.
Yeah, allowed us to break record high temperatures over the weekend. 95 and 96 here in Tampa, Florida, both Saturday and Sunday. Tied a record Saturday, broke a record on Sunday. So we're talking about wide-ranging influences always.
Yeah.
But I want to point out, the cone is the cone for a reason. It's a cone of uncertainty. Look how wide that cone is when we're talking about that area at day 3. Day 2, day 3, as we're talking about Puerto Rico and Hispaniola. Right side of the cone has the center of circulation over Puerto Rico. Left side of the cone has us over Hispaniola. That's several hundred miles. So although we're talking about a high confidence as far as where generally this system is heading, where exactly it heads is entirely important, not only for the long-term evolution and intensity of the storm, but also who sees the highest impact.
Right.
Tropical rainfall rates, the possibility, at least, especially if the system, worst case, as I mentioned, moved right in between the two islands, that would put Puerto Rico on the right side, the stronger side of the system, higher wind gusts, likely more rainfall, a little bit of surf. So there's a lot that remains to be seen as far as the evolution in the short term of this system, and then eventually what that'll lead to.
Exactly, and you mentioned, you know, a couple hundred miles. Think about how small the storm is. You mentioned earlier the tropical storm force winds only extend out about 45 miles. So there's a wide range of impacts that we're talking about here just 3 days from now.
So in the short term, satellite presentation has gotten a little bit better today. It's still surrounded by dry air, still a little bit of a mystery in the short term. Likely going to see some gradual intensification in the short term, as is indicated by the National Hurricane Center. Beyond that is really where the uncertainty starts to come in, and that's why they explicitly pointed that out in their forecast discussion. The track forecast looks good. The long-term intensity forecast is still a bit of a question mark at this point.
We'll be tracking it here every single day, tracking every move and every updates as well. But for now, we just don't have a lot to say about the Bahamas and Florida.
Yes, that's why we always say to prepare. You can put your plan into motion.
Yeah.
Should
it's that time of year anyway.
And Invest 98L, is it a misnomer? Is it something that's just kind of out there and we're not expecting to really have much of an impact as far as the United States?
Yeah, what is it? What is an invest? It's short for Area of Investigation. 98L is just the term that the National Hurricane Center gave that specific disturbance. We've been waiting on this thing. Talk about this weekend. This has had a pretty high probability for a while. It's being pushed out to sea by a frontal system. It's not expected to be much of an impact, maybe for the Canadian Maritimes long term, but for the east coast of the United States, we're not looking at this as a big deal. If it reaches a tropical depression or tropical storm status, it'll be given the name Erin, but that is just doing what tropical systems do and taking heat and energy from closer to the tropics and moving it poleward.
Dispersing it around.
Shooting it up into the North Atlantic. Yep.
As long as it stays out over the Atlantic, we are happy. But right now, like we've been talking about Dorian, you can see the dust. It's kind of ingesting it, but like as Ian said earlier, if it can close off that eye, it will prevent that dust from kind of getting in, and it will allow the storm to strengthen a little bit more.
And again, for the non-meteorologists on stream, dust is good, right? Dust is a
for
good
us,
thing.
Yes, not for the storm.
Not for the storm, but as far as the state of Florida?
Yeah, just people in general. It will keep the storm a little weaker.
Right.
Yeah, a little bit of dust, a lot of dry air, not only in the immediate vicinity, but even where it's moving. But that, as you mentioned, is counteracted by the fact that sea surface temperatures there are slightly above average. Tiny storms like this are always a little bit of a wild card.
Yep.
Not only the impacts can be hyper-local but intense, they can strengthen quickly and they can degenerate very quickly. So that's why we've seen such a spread long term with these forecast models. That's why the key messages here on Monday is we're watching this thing very closely. tiny changes long term have larger impacts.
Yes.
And we'll be bringing you the latest information as we continue to track the system across the Antilles, the Windward Islands. As I mentioned, the next couple days, we get better forecast information. It's going to be a key time for this storm as far as can it really tighten up, get its act together, and strengthen in the short term, or is this going to be a bit of a higher end tropical system that eventually succumbs to wind shear, perhaps terrain?
And I think by Wednesday, a lot of people are asking probably when we'll know more. Wednesday will probably be that key day because it will be over the Caribbean islands. We'll know if it's moving east or west or over the mountainous islands or staying over a smaller island there. That's kind of the key day this week.
Yeah, so stay with us if you're some of our folks that watch us locally on WFLA. It's Labor Day weekend. That is why people want to know. Yes,
that there are some of these Eastern Caribbean islands that are, that have, a big storm heading their way. But for folks here in Florida, a lot of them are asking, hey, Labor Day weekend's coming up. It's right here around the corner. It's this upcoming weekend. What does this mean for that? What would be the short answer for that right now? Is just that we're not sure yet, right?
Yeah, honestly, we're going to continue to track it every day. It's really going to depend on timing, too. Timing will be key here. Right now, the forecast is for this wave, Dorian, to be over the Bahamas on Saturday. So that would still leave, a relatively normal forecast for us.
Yeah, late Saturday.
Yeah. Sunday,
that's where we could possibly start to see some tropical moisture. If nothing else, that would enhance our rain chances. But at this point, there is no reason to be panicking or planning. We're not on here. We're just on here to tell you where the system stands right now and what we'll be watching for as we move on through the next couple of days. We talk about having your plan in place. Be ready, but don't be alarmed at this point. Right. This is a long ways out. It's Monday. We're talking about 6 days for impacts, if any.
And this has been a Monday special edition of Tracking the Tropics, streaming live to television station, websites, apps, and social media platforms in 6 states: Texas, Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia, Louisiana, and of course here in the state of Florida. I don't have the list in front of me, but those are the 6 states that we are streaming to right now. So I know that we have a large digital audience out there. Listen, we are going to be streaming here every day this week on this website, this app, or this social media platform or site. At 1:30 Eastern, 12:30 Central. It'll be myself, Amanda, and then depending on who is available here at WFLA, it's going to be a rotating team of meteorologists, I believe. So be sure to join us, 1:30 Eastern, 12:30 Central, every day this week as we follow Dorian, giving you the latest updates, the latest models, and what to expect as the storm moves a little bit more westward in our direction. But for Ian Oliver, Storm Teammate, and Storm Teammates Amanda Holly, I'm WFLA Digital Anchor JB Buno. Everybody, thanks so much for being with us. We'll see you tomorrow, 1:30 Eastern, 12:30 Central, right here on Tracking the Tropics.
Thank you for watching Tracking the Tropics.